Show me the door. I cannot stand to wait anymore. Somebody said, be what you be. We could be old and cold and dead on the sea. But I love you more than words can say. I can't count the reasons.
Good morning, everyone. By the way, this is a classic room of entrepreneurs because nobody is sitting at the front table. Everyone's the rabble-rousers in the back of the room, so kudos to that. Oh, the slides are up. Great. Just a bit of background. I have not been to Halifax since my undergrad years, and I came here to visit a friend Adele during Mardi Gras, so my memories of the city are a little bit hazy, to say the least. So it is very fun being back, through viewing the city through a different lens, so thank you for having me. I'm here to talk about how it is that brand and community can exponentially accelerate growth kind of in your business. And just a show of hands, and now that we're a little bit more awake, when Alistair asked you to put your hands up first, got a bit more engagement going here. Show of hands, how many of you are either technical background or product-based kind of founders? Hands up. Higher, I can't see. And how many of you come from a sales and marketing background? Interesting, so good to kind of mix in the audience there. Okay, so a bit of background on me. As was mentioned, I was a banker formerly. I know that bank can be a four-letter word in this kind of audience, so please don't hold it against me. But the reason why I bring this up is that I am what you would call kind of an accidental entrepreneur. I never in a million years thought that I would be running a business. Very, very kind of corporate upbringing, traditional background. My father was an accountant for his entire life with PricewaterhouseCoopers, where his focus was on bankruptcy and insolvency. So you can imagine in terms of how it is that, risk was viewed kind of in my household growing up. So entrepreneurship was never something that I ever even considered. I got pulled into this world. My partner in crime, Mark, founded RIGHTSLEEVE in the late 90s. And around the time that I was finishing up at A.T. Kearney, we were having started our family, and the lifestyle of management consulting doesn't necessarily jive so well with having a baby at home. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And he's like, why don't you just come in and help out? For a day or two a week, the company was going through a lot of growth challenges and change and challenges with team. And just come in for a day or two a week while you figure out what you want to do next. And, my kind of ego at the time was like, I've been working with Fortune 100 companies, with C-suite people solving like big problems. And you're asking me to come work with your 5-person team? Like, I don't know about that. But I kind of begrudgingly said, okay, I'll do this before I figure out my next kind of corporate gig. And as all of you in this room know, it was way more fun than what I was doing before. So I quickly shifted gears and jumped in with both feet and took over kind of running the team. And what was really interesting kind of in this journey is that I realized that the promotional products industry is actually really, really complicated. So it involves kind of sourcing products from all over the globe. There's a million different SKUs kind of to choose from. There's an unbelievable amount of logistics that are required to kind of deliver kind of product ultimately to get it decorated through screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, etching, all the different ways in which you can put the design kind of on a product. So it's an incredible amount of information that has to get communicated across a broad variety of kind of players in the supply chain in a very short period of time to deliver the products to the client at the end of the day. So here we were, a small business kind of running on QuickBooks. And we had Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook, typical kind of tools. This is back in the mid-2000s, to try and kind of manage all this chaos. And trying to scale a business using those tools was very, very challenging. So ultimately, we ended up building software in-house to kind of solve our own pain point and manage all the chaos around this, never with the intention of commercializing it, purely just to be able to help ourselves grow. And a couple years into it, we realized that we had completely transformed the way we ran the business. We had been able to dramatically kind of grow the business as a result of having systems that made it easier to do what we needed to do. So we kind of started getting this idea around commercializing it. And that is ultimately, 8 years ago, we spun out a separate business called commonsku, and that is kind of what brings us to today. So how do brand and community kind of play into this, and why is it that it has played such a huge role in the growth of both of these businesses? And I'm going to share with you today kind of some statistics, talk about some big companies in terms of how it is that they've approached this, but I'm going to spend most of my time talking about this journey of building these two businesses through the power of brand and community. And the reason why kind of this is so key to all this is that RIGHTSLEEVE has had amazing growth over the duration kind of its life cycle thus far without doing any cold calling. Our salespeople do not cold call. It has all been growth based on brand, based on kind of organic word of mouth, and being able to leverage kind of what it is that how we differentiate within the marketplace. And with commonsku, so 8 years in, we've had amazing growth, and we hired for the first time an outbound salesperson in July. So brand and community have been kind of foundational to the growth strategies of both of these businesses. So how it is that we're going to structure today, I'm going to talk about 5 things. 3 that are going to be focused on brand. So brand as a differentiator, brand as a sales engine, brand as a recruiter, and 2 things based on community, so community as a marketer, and community as a churn reducer. So 5 things. So first up, brand as a differentiator. We're going to play a game. Are you guys ready? I'm going to put a logo up on the screen, and I want you to say the first word that comes to your mind, just immediate kind of gut reaction, the immediate word that jumps to mind, and yell it out so that I can hear you. Okay, you ready? That's all of you named like Big Mac, French fries. Like it was all kind of food words. Okay. Luxury. Everyone, this is Chanel, for those of you who might not know kind of who it is. Run, sports, fit. LeBron. Design. Expensive. Easy to use. iPhone. Batmobile. So that was a very kind of interesting mix of words that came out during that. A lot of them ended up being surprisingly kind of product focused in terms of food or iPhone or that, but there was certainly a number of words that came out in there that were reactions that were emotional. So design, easy to use, kind of things that ultimately triggered those reactions within you, and are why it is that you're going to choose one of these brands over another. So when you're making the decision of whether to go to McDonald's or Burger King or to buy an iPhone versus a Samsung, that all of these things ultimately come down to functionality, but they also come down to how it is that you feel about the brand and how it is that you align yourself kind of with that brand. So what do all these things have in common, all these brands? They're industry leaders, they're all iconic brands, they are all B2C. So I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, these are huge companies that have marketing teams of hundreds, they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they're spending on marketing. How does that relate to what it is that I do? So let's talk about this in a B2B context instead. Ready? Gossip. What else? Speed. What else? Trump. They got a bit of a problem right now. Fake news. Okay. Who is this? Slack. Collaborate. Annoying. That's a visceral reaction. What else? Am I going to make you guys stand up and wake up? What's that? Inclusiveness. Interesting. Okay. Who is this? Stripe. Easy. Money. What else? Oh, this is like pulling teeth. One more. Scheduling. Who is this? Hootsuite. Nobody? Canadian. Interesting. Last one. Who is this? Jira? Atlassian? Bugs? Managing bugs, hopefully, not bugs in the software. Australia, easy. So a little bit harder to get reactions here, but ultimately, if these are tools that you use in your day-to-day life of managing your business, you can better believe you feel an attachment to them in some way, shape, or form. So I think about Stripe as an example that has made our life so much easier with subscription billing. It's allowed us to offer a payment gateway to our customers for them to be able to pay. So I love the brand as a result of kind of what it is that it has done and how it is that it has kind of facilitated things to make our lives easier. So ultimately, it is absolutely possible to create this kind of reaction in a B2B context as it is in a B2C context. So I want you to think about for a second your own brand or the company that you either have founded or work for and how it is, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think about that? So just think about that right now. Gut reaction, first word. You don't need to say it, you can think about it in your mind. If you don't have something that causes you to kind of jump out of your chair from an emotional perspective, then you need to rethink about how it is that you're differentiating within your brand. Because ultimately, the reason why this matters is that 80% of a buying decision is emotional. Only 20% is logical, 80% is emotional. So it is absolutely critical that you find a way to be able to connect and cause a reaction to your brand, cause an emotional connection as much as possible to your brand in order to be able to get the buyer to be more likely to buy from you. This is a really, really important thing. So if you didn't have a word that comes to mind when you think about your brand that creates some kind of emotional reaction, you got to rethink how it is that you're positioning your brand and think about ways that you can get there to create that response. So I wanted to give you some context from a right sleeve perspective. When the business was being branded in the first place, we're coming into a heavily kind of commoditized industry. So as I said, my partner in crime, Mark, founded this. I was doing my MBA at the time, so it was a pretty fun case study to work on to be able to do kind of this branding with him and launch kind of a new business. But ultimately, everyone in the business, it seemed, was named like ABC Promotions. And there was nothing very exciting kind of about the brands. There was nothing that differentiated. And none of them actually spent a lot of time focusing on their own brand. They focused a lot more on the brands they were selling, kind of as promotional products. So we came in and decided to kind of zig while others zagged. So first of all, in terms of coming up with the name. So right sleeve was, you wear your heart on your sleeve. You often put a logo on the right sleeve of a t-shirt. We decided left chest was not as appropriate, maybe, in terms of a name. So thinking about something that created a reaction and was memorable to begin with, but ultimately how it is that we went to market, we're all focused on the emotional reactions that we wanted the customer to feel. So design, fashion forward, edgy, so all the things we wanted to be able to accomplish for others in terms of how we were going to help them kind of market their brand was incredibly important in terms of how it is the brand was positioned to begin with. So I know most of you likely already have kind of a name for your business, and you're thinking, do you know how long it took me to come up with a name and how many vowels I had to drop to find a domain I could buy? So I'm not recommending renaming your business, but be thinking about how it is that you can create that point of differentiation in terms of how it is that you position kind of the brand and the name to begin with. An example of this that is pretty interesting, that of coming into kind of a very crowded space. So how many of you are familiar with Drift? So they are a messaging application that you can put on your website. They have a messaging bot that you can use as well. And they launched about 4 years ago. So they came into a space where intercom was the 100-pound gorilla. They'd been around for a long time. They were very established. They were very feature-rich. And similar to what Alistair brought up earlier, how Salesforce came into the market with the no software and the line kind of in the middle of that, that Drift came into the market with a very strong positioning around forms. They felt that a client coming to your website and having to fill out a form to request a demo or to get in touch was a shitty experience. And that ultimately it was creating friction within the sale, and they put a stake in the ground about the end of forms. and they did this category creation around something they're calling conversational marketing. How do you change the way in which you kind of engage with a potential prospect that reduces friction, that allows you to respond kind of in the moment, and take away this delay in time that happens when you fill out a form, you wait for someone to call you back, and ultimately introduces all this friction. So they came in with a very different positioning, this stake in the ground, and ultimately they did a huge amount of content around this, around how it is that we can create a better experience for the customer or the prospect when they come to your website. And when we were making the decision about what we wanted to go with in terms of a messaging application on commonsku.com, that Intercom would have been the logical one to go with. They'd been around a long time, very established, as I mentioned, very feature-rich, but ultimately, I was incredibly drawn to Drift as a brand. I was drawn to their positioning. I was drawn to how it is that they had, they were placing the stake in the ground around their vision of the future, of what it is that the interaction and the experience should be for the customer, and how it is that they positioned the brand, how it is that they did thought leadership in their content. And ultimately, we ended up going with them because I believed deeply in where they were going in the future as opposed to where they were today. We made that decision without talking to a single person at Drift. This was all just any kind of the interaction and exposure that we had had with their brand during the research phase of making that decision. So there's incredible power in what it is that the brand can do in terms of that decision-making point, and how it is that differentiation plays a huge role within that. And by the way, if you are not kind of using something like this now, this has utterly transformed how it is that we manage that initial top of the funnel experience for a customer, being able to book demos through a bot online, automatic calendar invites being sent out with screen shares. It has hugely, hugely shortened our sales cycle in that upfront part. So that's just a little plug from my friends at Drift. Okay, so next up, brand as a sales engine. The old adage holds true. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. The challenge is, with the way the world happens today, where the B2B researcher is spending far more time kind of online making a decision before they talk to a salesperson, the funnel now looks like this. It used to be that marketing was responsible for getting people through awareness and interest, and ultimately sales could step in at the consideration phase. So that ability to build a relationship, to establish kind of trust, to get someone to like you, all those elements of being able to have a person inserted into the equation used to happen far earlier in the funnel. And what's happening now is that brand and marketing have to do all the heavy lifting to get that prospect deep down into the funnel to evaluation before they're even talking to a person. So how do you get a prospect to know, like, and trust you if you can't even talk to them until they're down to that evaluation phase? So this is where brand acts as a sales engine. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on is kind of humanizing the company, humanizing the brand. How do you kind of create that feeling that there are people kind of behind the company? It's not some faceless organization that you are buying from. So through your company page, through social media, through all the means that you have to be able to show that there are people that someone can know, like, and trust, that are behind the brand, do that as much as possible. Don't have a contact us at the bottom of the site with nothing kind of about you as a company. You have to be able to create that feeling of kind of like and trust before kind of someone gets to that point of talking to a salesperson. One of the things that we did is when someone new joins the team, we send have them fill out a questionnaire of about 20 questions that are talking about who they are as an individual. What's interesting about them, their background, what they do for hobbies, how they spend their free time, kind of all those pieces, so that we do a feature on the blog. This is Bree, one of our customer success people out in Vancouver. And when they join the team, we put this up on the blog so that, again, it's humanizing the brand. Let people get to know the individuals kind of that are working at your company if they're not going to have that ability to engage with them until they're deep into the funnel. The other element of humanizing, we created a mascot. This is SKUBot. So if you don't have that ability to have those conversations in the beginning, how do you create personality in your brand? So SKUBot features prominently in all of our marketing and all the swag that we do, and ultimately he's a fun kind of character that enables us to be able to inject kind of personality. Trust. There are tons of ways that you can establish trust through signaling on your site. So things like how many customers you have, how many years you've been in business. For us, distributor sales volume is a big metric for us in terms of being able to establish trust. So there are lots of ways that you can communicate this information, on your company page or even on the home part of your page to be able to establish, if you haven't been around for a long time, to be able to establish trust. What is the signaling that you can do to be able to get people to have confidence ultimately in your brand? And who wouldn't trust a company that has a lab as their office dog that snuggles up with the SCUBA stuff? I mean, come on. So there's ways that you can do this through imagery as well, if you don't have the numbers to back it up yet, if you're early on kind of in the journey. The last piece in this equation, in terms of establishing trust, is ultimately there is huge power in case studies that you have with customers that are happy and believe in your product and have great things to say about it. We leverage video testimonials very heavily. So whatever opportunity you have to be able to get in front of your customers and to be able to record, could be voice, could be video, could just be a written blog, that being able to capture how it is that they feel kind of about your company is going to establish far greater trust in terms of selling than ultimately you can do with this. And as much as possible, kind of featuring, these are both founders of the companies that are customers on commonsku, that establishing kind of people behind it, so again, humanizing it, using pictures, video, that can ultimately do a lot to be able to kind of get someone else to tell your story for you and create trust kind of in the brand. Okay, last piece on brand. So brand as a recruiter. The single most important thing for you as a CEO or founder is to be building a team. I can't emphasize that enough, that ultimately if you can surround yourself with really good people, that is going to accelerate your business kind of beyond anything. So you need to be spending a lot of your time thinking about how it is that you're going to attract top talent to your company. Brand is the first interaction that any potential candidate has with your company. Before you've had a chance to have any kind of conversation with them, when they are researching your company and they're trying to figure out whether it's something that a company that they want to join, that ultimately brand is the first interaction that they have with you. So how do you communicate that in a way that makes them want to work for your organization, to be engaged? Social media is incredibly powerful here. Or how do you signal through pictures that you share, experiences in the company, what it's like to work for your organization, and how it is that what the brand kind of ultimately feels like on a day-to-day basis. So this is our team axe throwing. And by the way, I won. Just saying. So the ultimately kind of making people experience kind of what it's like to be with your team on a day-to-day basis. So leverage social channels, leverage the company page, any way that in which you can show kind of what it is that it's like to work at your organization when somebody is researching your brand. Language is incredibly important when you are creating a job description. So listen to the words here. We are on a mission to change the way small businesses operate, democratizing software to enable an open playing field. Those are very, very powerful words in terms of how it is that you're establishing kind of vision, what it is that you stand for as a brand. So how it is that you select words in a job description are extremely important. The second part of this, we don't just sell software, we care deeply about helping our customers build better businesses through content, events, and community for sharing. So both of those things are trying to attract people that want to get on that train, that are excited about the opportunity to go on this mission, excited about the opportunity of democratizing software, excited about a company that cares about their customers and wants to set them up for success. So the more that you can use language in terms of how it is that you communicate the positioning of your brand, the more interested you're going to have a candidate to want to work for you in the first place. An example that I'll share, we recently had a coup in attracting someone to the team from the States who had worked at the same company for 18 years. He was a well-known kind of personality in the promotional industry. And ultimately, I sat down and had a conversation with him in August, laying out kind of a vision for this new role that we were looking to create in the organization. And within 6 days, he had signed an offer. All of that had to do with what he knew about the brand, kind of leading up to it, what he knew about the vision and the mission that we were on, and he was willing to jump ship from a company he had been with for 18 years, where he was in a very senior position, to come to a position that didn't exist. I was kind of creating, a new position, didn't know exactly kind of how it was going to work out, but ultimately he said the reason why he chose, he's like, you didn't lead with compensation, you led with vision. So the more that you are out there kind of in the marketplace, communicating your brand, communicating what you stand for, making kind of a ruckus, that ultimately it's going to do a lot for you. You're not kind of aware of how much is going on in the background of being able, people that are watching what you're doing, and that ultimately could be your next amazing hire that you can attract. Okay, last piece as far as brand as recruiting is concerned. So RIGHTSLEEVE runs a program for Shopify where we do all their new employee onboarding kits. So as you know, Shopify has been on this amazing rocket ride over the past couple years. They've been hiring thousands of people. And ultimately, something that's incredibly important to them is how it is that their new hires are pulled into the culture kind of from the beginning and made to feel part of the team. So when a new hire joins, they have waiting for them at their desk a Shopify backpack with a hoodie and a t-shirt that are in their size, a notebook, sunglasses, pen, and a customized hang tag on the backpack with their name kind of welcoming them to the team. So this has been a distribution program that we're running globally for them. And ultimately, there was a very interesting decision point that they needed to make in thinking about who they did these kits for. Shopify hires a ton of co-op students. A co-op student is only at the company for 4 months. And ultimately, they could have said, this is an expensive welcome kit that we do. Maybe we won't do it for co-op students. But that's not kind of what they did. They realized that a co-op student who comes and works for Shopify and receives kind of that kit is going to go back to campus, and they're going to be a walking billboard with that Shopify hoodie, with the Shopify t-shirt, carrying their backpack, that they are walking around campus kind of all day long marketing for Shopify. Same as their team is walking around Ottawa, Toronto, Waterloo, in Ireland, and the Philippines, all over the world kind of wearing this merchandise. So understanding that brand, and obviously I'm very partial to swag, it's my background, but understanding the power of being able to have people wear your brand with pride and what it is that means for them to be able to be recruiters kind of for your company. Don't miss out on the opportunity to be able to accomplish that. Switching gears, how are we doing? Everyone awake? We're good? We're going to switch into community now. So community as a marketer. How many of you are fans of Seth Godin? Wow, not that many. I would highly, highly recommend reading his blog, if nothing else. He's got a great new podcast out called Akimbo. He is a prolific author. He's a very kind of thoughtful writer around the topics of brand and developing community. So one of the books that he wrote is something called Tribes. And ultimately, his position on this is that a tribe is something that connects people together through either an idea or a person, and ultimately that who it is that you sell to kind of becomes your tribe. And if you can identify early on who is within your tribe that you want to sell to and who doesn't get it, that you're not going to waste your time and energy on, that the more kind of powerful that cycle becomes. Because those who kind of gravitate towards viewing the world through a similar lens or being attracted to a particular idea are far more likely to spend kind of time together and communicate and be able to kind of amplify that message, no pun intended. So there are some giants that have done an amazing job with this from an event perspective. So HubSpot first launched their inbound conference to be able to bring together all the people who are interested in inbound marketing, regardless of whether or not they were a HubSpot customer. So it's bringing together the tribe of people who had a passion for inbound marketing and giving them the opportunity to not only be educated, but to be able to network with each other around what it is that they were doing to be successful within their own businesses. Drift launched Hypergrowth last year. It's now happening in 2 cities in 2018, San Francisco and Boston. Salesforce has obviously had Dreamforce for many years. There are now thousands and thousands of people that go to Dreamforce, bringing together people who have a passion around CRM. Shopify launched Unite a number of years ago. So ultimately, the idea behind all of these things is to bring together people in a physical environment to be able to get them to network, to talk about kind of this common vision, purpose, idea, mission that brings them together. So given what these giant companies had done, we figured we wanted to follow in the footsteps of them. So early on in the days of commonsku, we launched SKUCon. We decided to piggyback on an industry event that was already happening. There's a giant trade show that happens in Las Vegas every year. So we thought, what if we can get people to fly out a day or two early, bring them together for a day of education, and then have them be able to continue on to the show afterwards. And I can tell you that this was very early in the days of the business, and it was a terrifying prospect of wondering, is anyone going to buy a ticket? Is anyone going to show up? We made the tickets at a very reasonable price point, $99. We had suppliers kind of sponsor the event so we could offset the cost on that with a low ticket price, and kind of launched it into the world and crossed our fingers to see whether anyone would buy. We sold out in our first year, and the morning of, in Vegas, waiting for people to arrive, it was that moment of like utter panic of what if nobody shows up. It was just terrifying to think that this idea that we're getting people to fly in kind of early for this event. And it ended up being kind of a huge success. And what we hadn't anticipated that came out of it, because the vision was, how do we bring together people that are passionate about changing the industry, that want to share what they're doing in their own experiences in their business. Some were commonsku customers, some were not. But ultimately, what came out of it that was unexpected is it created an enormous amount of buzz at the show. So we had everyone that had attended walking around kind of buzzing about their experience at SKUCon. We had a huge amount of impact on social and exposure from that perspective. So all of a sudden it became this incredible conversation that was happening at the trade show. People were coming up to our booth. What sounds like SKUCon was amazing. And so it was this unintended consequence of being able to have this incredible marketing effect that we weren't anticipating in the original vision of hosting it in the first place. So this year, this will be our 6th year hosting it in Vegas. We've now got upwards of 350 who are attending, and it's become a huge thing for us in terms of being able to bring together the community, to have that experience of the tribe kind of coming together and networking with one another. And it was so successful that ultimately we launched a second event series. So this time, we decided to really take a risk of saying we're going to host this in a place where people have to fly there just for the event, not piggybacking on an industry conference. The ticket price was over $1,000. It was a significant commitment. 2.5-day boot camp, so we called it SKU Camp, because the intent was to have kind of workshop-oriented sessions to be able to do business planning for the upcoming year. We hosted at the beginning of October. So last year was our first year doing it. We did it in Palm Springs at the Ace Hotel, which, by the way, is the most amazing location. And the whole impact of location and the kind of visuals around that is incredibly important as we look out at this spectacular view from here. So the Ace Hotel in Palm Springs was this amazing location, but bringing together all these people that ultimately had this kind of shared passion around bettering their business in the following year. So this year we hosted it in New Orleans, had 130 people down. This is the rooftop of the Ace Hotel in New Orleans, and it's just been this incredible experience for us, both in terms of reinforcing kind of this notion of that you're not alone out there building your business, kind of bringing people together, and ultimately being able to have kind of everyone be then using social media, sharing their experiences afterward, and having it act kind of as an amazing kind of marketing arm for us. Last piece, community as a churn reducer. So since the inception of, how many of you are familiar with David Scott, Matrix Partners, SaaS Metrics? How many of you are in SaaS businesses or any kind of recurring revenue? Right, so churn is a hugely, hugely important thing in terms of the health of your business. We have been in a privileged position to have had negative churn since inception of commonsku, so meaning that we add more licenses per month and customers that are leaving. Ultimately, what this can do for your growth curve is enormous. This is the difference between 95% retention and 80% retention in terms of your overall growth curve. And what that means kind of over time as you extend that curve out is that if you don't get churn under control, it can destroy your business. You spend so much time and effort and money bringing prospects kind of in the door, converting them into customers, onboarding them, that to lose them out the back after all that is just so, so expensive and hugely damaging ultimately to that growth curve. So anything that you can do to reduce churn is going to have a dramatic impact in the overall acceleration of the growth in your business. So community has played a huge role within this. We believe so deeply in community that we actually built it into the commonsku platform. So when you are logged into the software and using it in your everyday kind of work life, ultimately there's a community that sits inside the platform where you, as a promotional products distributor or a supplier, can ask questions, as an example. So looking for cool office products, fellow distributors can respond and help out with answers, or the supplier can respond and actually suggest a product directly into that question that then can be added to your presentation or order that you're working on. So what this has done kind of for the product is it's made it incredibly sticky. You're not just buying software, you're buying into this ability to tap the collective brain power of the thousands of other people that are on the platform to be able to help you be more successful in your business. So it's not just a matter of sourcing products, there are conversations that happen on there. There was recently, Fast Company wrote an article last week about kind of cheap conference swag, and it created this like huge response in the industry. People were really upset about it, and there was a huge amount of conversation that went on. So all this dialogue was happening inside the platform, around this thing that people were so upset about. So ways of being able to create ways of fostering conversations, being able to help, if there's questions about how to grow your business, that all of that can kind of happen within the platform. So you're not just buying software, you're buying into a community. You're buying into that ability to collaborate. You're buying into, the events that we put on. You're buying into the content that we do. And ultimately, kind of all of those things has meant that the average growth rate of a distributor on commonsku is significantly higher than the average growth rate within the industry as a whole. So ultimately, we are helping people grow their businesses. They are in turn adding people to their team. That's adding licenses for us, and all this becomes this incredible kind of virtuous circle that has resulted in negative churn. So the more that you can do to be able to wrap your arms kind of around your customers doesn't mean going in and building this into your application. You could use Facebook groups, use anything that exists out there already to be able to give a reason to bring people together and to be able to create those conversations, that it adds a whole other element of kind of stickiness. They're not just buying software, they're buying into a community. So to give you a sense of what kind of impact this has had, going back to the events for a minute, so some response that came out of SKU Camp. Thank you to the whole SKU crew for putting on this phenomenal event that brings together this community and inspires the promotional products industry. Look at the language within there. So phenomenal, inspires. Inspires to me is the most important word within there. If this is the reaction kind of coming out of this event, people, if that is what is the emotion that's created being there, people want to come back. It's going to draw them in, and recognizing that there is more to commonsku than simply software that is powering your business. There's this notion of how it is that it can help you kind of grow and be more successful. Second kind of reaction, it's so hard to say goodbye, a definite highlight of my year. Thank you, commonsku, for bringing together fabulous talent and content. My mind is full and blown. I am rejuvenated and coming back with my 30-60-90 plan. Thank you so much for for so many amazing industry peeps that I've built stronger connections with, leaned on, and soaked up so much knowledge. If Sarah, in this case, is considering leaving commonsku to buy a different software platform that ultimately might be able to kind of do some of the same kind of functionality as this, she's leaving all these other things too. She's leaving the inspiration, she's leaving kind of the business planning, she's leaving kind of all the things that are helping her be more successful in her business. And that makes it a lot harder to say, I'm going to walk away for something that's cheaper, or for something that might have one or two more features, because there is so much more than just the software. And lastly, got my mind blown at SKU Camp. Can't wait to start applying all those knowledge bombs. Oh, and the swag didn't disappoint either. So again, listen to the words there. Mind blown, knowledge bombs. These are all things that ultimately create a huge amount of stickiness and keep people wanting people to come back kind of to events kind of on an ongoing basis, and that they ultimately start establishing these relationships that extend kind of far beyond the events. We had people coming out of SKU Camp this year. I asked the audience at the end of the event as to what it was that they were going to do differently. So similar to the question that was asked of you at the beginning, what are you going to do differently after you leave this conference? And one of the responses that came back was that they were going to hold a local meetup within their own city of people on their team. So SKU Camp is typically, owners or people in senior management positions that come. There isn't the opportunity for others on their team to be able to come to this kind of event. So they were going to get their teams together within the cities. These are people that are competitors. They compete with each other, and they came out of that event saying, we are going to bring together our teams in our city when we go back to be able to help them kind of share knowledge and help them get better at what it is that they do. That's incredible. So ultimately, this ability to kind of bring together like-minded people who share this common vision, that they are going back and collaborating with their competitors as a result of what it is that we have done to kind of create that connection. So far, far more powerful than simply software. What is it that you can do to be able to create community around that? Takeaways. Going back to that first word that came to your mind when you said your own brand, what can you do to articulate the emotion of your brand? Think about how it is that you can differentiate, ways in which you can cause that reaction to be able to get that 80% of the decision point that emotion plays in selecting a product. Humanize your team and your customers. How can you kind of create, getting the people to know, like, and trust you before they've had any interaction with your sales team? How can you create that human connection kind of through your brand, through your social media, through your site, to be able to get people deeper in that funnel and not lose them along the way? And lastly, look for opportunities to build community in any way you can. It doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be some crazy, event that you put on, but how can you bring together people who share kind of a common vision around an idea, around a leader, ways in which you can create a tribe within your customers in any way possible. That is it. I have a few minutes for questions maybe, or I can't see anyone at the back there. I will be on the panel at the end, so again, happy to answer questions there. All right, thank you very much.